I just went to myself, what am I doing here? Like, I'm a lad at school, and now I've got the British Army looking for me. And anyway, your mom says, get the thing out. So the blindfolded me, got me out of Land Rover, took me into this field, and told me to get down on my knees, and they pushed me down on my knees. And so your mom cocks a gun, I hear a gun cracking, fired it. And well, he fired it. Unless you're a psychopath, right? It's very hard to do anything. You need to have coping mechanisms. You need to convince yourself that you're right. You need to convince yourself that it's the enemy. You need to do all of that. Otherwise, if there was United Ireland tomorrow, people here would get persecuted. So if United Ireland was there, I wouldn't trust Republicans not to persecute those people who were involved or their families.
Billy, thank you very much for sitting down with me and taking the time. And we've loads to go into. You've a hell of a life lived up until this point. So you might to start people off, you might just kind of describe what the area you grew up was like, and indeed where it is. Just provide a context. You were born in 1955, so very much came of age as a teenager when the conflict was kind of heating up and getting going.
Well, I suppose I grew up in part of Belfast, which was called the Shankill. And I think that Shankill and Falls seem to be talked about more than anywhere else. And when I was growing up, both the Shankill and the Falls was mixed. So there were people from both religions lived there. And then, I suppose, whenever the Troubles broke out in '69, it changed things and people moved away. People's homes were attacked and stuff like that. So on both sides, people moved away to live in safer areas. So from that point of view, they were very working class areas. The Shankill would have been seen as pro-British. Lots of people, I suppose, in my area came back from different conflicts around the world in the 50s and 60s and settled all over the place, but I knew the ones came back and settled in the Shankill. So from that point of view, they were coming back into a very working class area, an area that was full of poverty, but still people believed that it was a Unionist government for Unionist people, but they didn't do anything about it. But people had this belief. I suppose in sort of the 60s, the whole notion of British Empire had collapsed or was collapsing. So you had all of that, but people were away fighting in places like Cyprus, Aden, just to mention two, but all the other conflicts done around the world. And so that was very prevalent at that particular time. People were in the services and came back and were coming back and couldn't get a house. So from that point of view, they were the problems that was existing then. But some people look back with nostalgia and say they were the good old days. But that's how we all see life.
You would have considered yourself, if someone asked you, are you Irish or British? You'd have most certainly said British, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, I think there's an argument here, and I think that argument has disappeared very quickly because of the Republicans how they write their own narrative. I mean, I went to school, primary school, when I lived there, and I also went to secondary school when I lived there. But in primary school, we wore a sprig of shamrock in our jumpers going to school, put in by our parents. There was a Unionist hall and an Orange hall not far from where I lived, and they put on all sorts of cultural things and stuff like that. In fact, there was Irish dancing in some of them as well. My ex-wife was a Kerry set. Was a Kerry set, you call it? Yeah. and that's what she did when she was a kid, because it was part of our culture. But that all changed whenever we had Provisional Ireland and others who didn't want anybody to be Irish. So my view is, and this is only my view, politically I'm British, but Irish, I always had a bit of Irish culture in that sense, because it was taught to me at school. It was taught to me when we went to the sort of, the Unionist Hall or the Orange Hall. In fact, I remember one time, just around the corner from where I lived, I'm trying to remember the name of the Orange Order Lodge, but it was called something like, I remember, it was Irish culture or something, but on the banner, it was all about Irish culture. It wasn't King Billy on the banner. It wasn't a king or a queen. It was about Irish culture. And I think all of that changed after then, obviously because of propaganda and because of the hatred that was built up and because of the attacks on British people. So it wasn't like, my father, I always say I was brought up in a mixed marriage because my father was a socialist and my mother was a unionist, so their politics was very, very different. My father would have went to somebody like Jerry Pitt, where my mother would have went to whoever the local MP was or local councillors, who were all unionists. So they have two different opinions clashed all the time. And I heard the debates in the house whenever they clashed. So, but no, it was never about just being British. British was our political identity, but we always had that sense of Irishness as well in terms of our culture and seeing it every day in my life. It wasn't something that was, denounced or hidden away.
I think roughly speaking, through those decades, kind of 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, the ratio Catholic Protestant was about kind of 60-40, Protestant to Catholic. Did it feel as if you were part of a majority?
Yeah, we were a majority in terms of not Protestant and Catholic, but Unionist and Nationalist. We always were, and the vote showed that. I think people are mistaken if they think that every Protestant born is a Unionist and every Catholic born is a Nationalist. It's not how it works. People will have their views. They will learn the views, and then they make a decision about what to do. So, I keep saying to people, no matter what happens around a border poll, there'll be a large minority. And if you don't deal with that large minority, then you're going to be in trouble. Doesn't matter who that minority is. If you don't deal with them in a proper way, so my view is not about trying to get Catholics to vote Unionist. My view has always been that what we need to do is to make Catholics feel at home in the UK. Northern Ireland is part of the UK, and that's what we have to do. I know that other people now, like the Ulster Unionist Party, are trying to get middle-class Catholics to vote for them. Why would you vote if you were a Catholic and a Nationalist? Why would you vote Unionist? Or if you're Unionist, why would you vote Nationalist? You can use your PR to do that, but when it comes to an election for an MP, you can't do that because you've only one choice. But anyway, so you've got all of those issues that are facing us. Some people don't understand what they are, even though they're in these political parties. I mean, the reality is, I represented the PEP. We had a document back in 1879 which talked about making Catholics feel comfortable in the Union. And what was presented to the then Secretary of State, he said this document's 20 years ahead of its time. That document was the basis of the Good Friday Agreement. And all the things that the Good Friday Agreement had in it, but no Secretary of State would actually push it because he said nobody else was as far on as the PEP were in 79.
Okay. I've interviewed other lawyers before, and I've somehow forgot to ask the question. But do the terms unionist and loyalist essentially mean the same thing? Are they kind of interchangeable? Any difference between them?
No, they're not the same thing. Loyalism is a term that's given to people who are involved in violence. It's a derogatory term used by the media. So to give you an interest, I'll give you an example. So, you know, I read the headlines in the Belfast Telegraph, no, out on the billboards, and I got a call from the late David Irvine, and he said to me, "What did you do?" I says, "Didn't do anything to it." He said, "It says here, it said on the billboard, uh, Loyalist councillor arrested for assault." I said, "It wasn't me." Now, we're the only two Loyalist councillors. There's nobody else. But the point that I'm making to you is, it was a DUP councillor who had been arrested for assaulting a police officer, and they described him as a Loyalist politician. Not as a DUP councillor, but as a Loyalist politician. And this is, so it's always been used as a derogatory term. But my view is about loyalism, it's about somebody who's prepared to take up arms.
Okay. It's the willingness to engage in violence for it.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
But everybody will have a different definition, including the media, which is just one. Let's use this whenever something bad happens, and we don't want to describe them as DUP.
Fair enough. Can you recall like maybe your earliest memory of either experiencing sectarianism yourself or just seeing it and being aware that sectarianism is what you were seeing? Do you remember how early?
Well, I didn't know it was sectarianism at the time, but the Melbourne Street murders, my grandmother lived 50 yards from there. So in the 60s, in the early 60s, I was always with my grandmother. My grandmother died in 66. But I still run up and down to see my granddad and my aunts and uncles and stuff like that. So, seeing all this writing on the wall about the UVF, and I'd heard about the Melbourne Street murders. You know what I mean? So that was going on, but I didn't know or didn't think about it being sectarian. So from that point of view, obviously, whether people want to describe it as sectarian or not, is another matter. From my position, I don't see it as sectarian. But I'm only going what I know that I didn't know then. But the reality is that I didn't come up against sectarian because essentially my father was a socialist. So my father took me to Dunville Park, which is just at the Royal Hospital in the Falls. He took me to Clonard Picture House, which is just down from there. So, he had a friend called Paddy Smith, and he took me to their house, which is on Cooper Street. So from that point of view, I didn't see all this, my father didn't talk about it. My mother talked more about what unionism was doing for everybody and all that sort of stuff. And he talked about what unionism wasn't doing and what nationalists would do in terms of independent nationalist councillors councillors and stuff. So from that point of view, it was totally different. So when I was growing up, that's the sort of thing I grew up in. I had Catholic friends who lived up the street. Didn't talk about it, didn't do anything. They just got on with it. There was no that I'm aware of. They had no signs of suggesting they were Catholics in terms of religious. They didn't have any of that stuff in the house or anything else, but they lived there. Now, in fairness, it was a mixed marriage. The mother was a Catholic and the father was a Protestant. So, from that point of view. But when I did go to Paddy Smith's house, it was covered in stuff which was about the Catholic religion. Yeah, the Pope, the Virgin Mary, all that sort of stuff. So from that point of view, that's what I seen. Did it scare me? Not really. When I was young, the chapel at our down was one of the doors you run up the steps, the top, and then knock a door and run. But the reality was, we were told that there was tongues in it, and if it caught a prod, we went into the tongue and never come out again. So, but all of this is mythical around religion, if you know what I mean. But no, I mean, until the troubles really started, you know, we didn't see it. You know, my community was more focused on people working, you know, because of the Protestant state, you had to work. And I know one guy who didn't work, and he ran up and down the cookies all day, and he did painting for people and stuff like that, and they paid him on their hand. And he was totally deplored in that area. He was seen as somebody who was, how would I describe it now? I'm trying to think of the right word. Anyway, he was seen as somebody who didn't work, so therefore he didn't pay taxes, and he was living off the state. That's how he was seen. I'm trying to think of the word, I can't remember what word I would use for it. I don't want to be using just a word, but
like freeloader or something.
Pardon? Well, something like that, yeah. But you know, everybody was down on him, you know, because he didn't work. Yeah, you know, so there was that sort of stuff. You were ostracized by people if you didn't have a job. Right? You know, when I think back and I'm going, what happened to that guy before DLA or whatever we got here? You know, when he was on the sick or whatever. And then people would say to me, if I said that to them, well, he runs up and down the bookies all day and he's painting people's houses, so he couldn't be that sick, if you know what I mean. But you know, but that's the way it was. It was a state where everybody believed that they had a duty to go out and work, even if it meant that they were working for less money than they would have got somewhere else. They did it. And it was about keeping the state going, making sure the engineering firms, the shipbuilding, and everything else, and aircraft building was all there to actually bring the money in to help the state.
You obviously know the troubles properly, like officially, kind of started like you said, 69. But obviously, in the years leading up to them, there was very much. It was more than a simmering. It was the situation was kind of being brought to a boil, and then eventually the British Army had to be brought in and stuff. Do you remember?
Yeah, but you have to remember this: at the behest of the Catholic population, they were brought in to protect them. You know, but going back to what you were saying there was trouble in '66. 66 was the 50th anniversary of the Eastern Rising. The IRA were active and being active in Ardoyne, which is just at the back of Shankill. So they were already recruiting and building up. And that's why the Marlborough Street murders happened and other things happened at the same time. If you were to check out history around that time, you'll see that there was an increase in violence. So there was a threat to the state as far as some people were concerned at that particular time. I was 9, wasn't 10 yet, right? Or what? Oh, I was 10. I wasn't 11 yet. So from that point of view, you know, I can only speak by what I've seen and then what I read, you know what I mean? And also what I've been told. So, you know, you have all of those problems. Yes. 66 was the 50th anniversary of Easter Rising and the 50th anniversary of the Battle of Somme. And there was conflict there in terms of both of those, because the IRA, when they wanted to commemorate Irish soldiers who died in the 16th Irish Division or the 36th Ulster Division. So you had all of that. So there was a history here. You know, it just didn't start in '66 because of, doesn't matter who started it, because we can argue that depending on your side, you could argue who started it. But my view is those commemorations brought about tension. The IRA were arming, and therefore it meant then that was a threat to the state. And you know, there's probably 12 different arguments about what happened then and who did it and all the rest of it. But the point about it is that's when the whole thing was, I suppose, exacerbated. So from that point of view, we know that's when the problem was. We know in '69 was the eventual outcome was going to happen. And again, you know, none of us knows who fired the first shot, the first stone or first pepper bomb, but people on both sides, you know, had properties burnt.
Sure, yeah, no, very, very scary times that this idea of like a mob of people who live not too far from you coming and they're throwing you out of their house and burning the house. It's incredibly scary thing. I grew up in the countryside, so like you've nothing but space all around you. I've always found it I've always found it funny how like in like urban areas your door can literally be just right there, open up onto the street. You know, it's so public. You're very kind of vulnerable to a mob. You know. Do you remember when these started happening, like the likes of Bombay Street, and I know it happened to Protestant areas too, where a mob of people would essentially go and evict family.
Yeah. Look, in '69, I lived in a two up, two down. My father's mother and father, sister, and her son lived in a house in Conway Street, which run down the falls, and they had to be evacuated out of their house. And they had to come and live in our house until we were able to get them sorted out. So, like, you know, this is a two up, two down, and it's very difficult. But you know, we all had to sleep. Most have slept on the floor or whatever, and that the older people get to bed and stuff like that. You know, but we had them for a while, and then we had to get them rehoused. So they were rehoused, and they moved up to a new estate that was being built. And you know, those stories are all over. Same what happened to somebody on the falls. You know, and this is the whole thing. So my granny, where she lived, you know, First Street separated them from the bottom of Conway Street, right, which run on the falls, and First Street went up went up on the Shank. Well, from the houses up there, went up on the Shank. And then you had Cooper Street, which is a very mixed street, like Conway Street was as well. So you had all of these people all living together. And then somebody lights the blue touch paper, and up it goes. And, you know, all those neighbours are lost. And that's the problem. They, you know, have to move into a very, how would I describe it, ghetto in terms of, you know, single identity, all that sort of stuff. And all of that richness that was there beforehand isn't there any longer. So from that point of view, you know, there was no winners in this, you know, at that time, no winners. Because, you know, those people were family people it was happening to. And they probably weren't owned, but they were owned to me, if you know what I mean. You know, and we all know that when, you know, like, you know, then when you went to the doctors looked very old and teachers looked old and all the rest of it. Now when I go to the doctors or go to the hospital, I'm just wondering, is this doctor out of school yet? You know, because you have a different perspective as you're growing up. You know, when you're young, everybody's old. And when you're older, everybody's young, if you know what I mean. So from that point of view, like there was no winners or losers. The difficulty was that we were plunged into this. It happened, and it got worse as we went on. So we all had to live this in some way. Some people put their head down, carried on, and other people like myself didn't. And that was for a number of reasons. But you know, it's a myth to think that we all grew up, you know, and we all had jobs and all that sort of stuff. You know, I would have had a job whenever I left school. I got it myself. Went down, signed on the broom and made it out of school, and then went into a factory, very small factory. I just said, "Dear man, look, I'm looking for a job. I can start on Monday." And he just went to me, "Right, okay. You want to start on Monday?" But nobody got me that job. I found that job myself because I just went in and said to them, it was very handy to my house. It was around the corner. But anyway, you know, and they made tubular steel stuff, furniture for schools, for bars, and all the rest of it. And I can remember it wasn't there that long, and we were doing a bar in the Shankill, with this tubular furniture, and the boys who fitted it all said to me, "Come here and give us a hand today." So I went round. They were old people to me, but they were probably in their late 20s. You know, I was like 15, 16, and I went round to the bar. And they said to me, "You want to stay for lunch?" And I went, "No." And said, "Why?" And I said, "Sandwiches around there, I'm going to go around and eat them." And so I was always a bit of a loner. So I left, sitting in the workshop, eating my sandwiches, and boom, the bar was blown up.
What?
The bar was blown up. Now, them two boys were all right, cuts and scrapes, that was it. But, that's the sort of thing happened then. Um, and that was 1971, so like, this is a guy that's just left school and was working in the tubular. I'm laughing now, like I'm laughing because I just left school, went round to the bar to help him out, and then decided, no, I'm going round, if somebody's around the workshop, I'm going round to date them. I was a loner, if you know what I mean. I didn't, I had friends, like, but anyway, that's what happened, and when I think about that, I just go, they survived, they were injured. I probably would have been the same, but you don't know that because you don't know where you'd have been. If you'd got up to get something or whatever, you might have been laying in the bomb, track line. But no, so those things have happened, and you'll find those stories on both sides. Like, but so what I'm saying here is that I'm not saying things to you to justify anything that happened. What I'm saying to you is that I know what happened to both sides, but I'm telling our story. So from that point of view, you know, people could have went through their whole lives and never, seen anything or were never caught up in things. And then unfortunately a lot of people were, you know, like Bloody Friday, people went out doing their business and ended up dead, you know, including Catholics, by the way, by RA bombs. So yeah, you had all of that. And so whenever people were shooting or planting a bomb, you just weren't guaranteed that somebody else wouldn't get hurt. But some people did, and lots of people didn't. And that was the difficulty. So growing up then, particularly whenever I started using bombs, it got worse and worse and worse. And as well as that, they had gangs out trying to shoot people. Um, they were coming around areas, and indiscriminately firing in the Protestant communities. And that was, one of the UDA, that was their birth. They were vigilante people who were trying to protect the streets with sticks, by the way, nothing else, barbed wire fences. And so from that point of view, that vigilante movement grew the UDA.
Um,
Their job was just to try to stop people coming into the community.
I was going to ask you. Speaking of bombs, I spoke. We got connected through Eddie Kenner, and he told me that I think when he was about 14, he was helping pick through the rubble caused by a bomb blast in a furniture shop. It actually killed two very like two babies.
18-month-old baby and a 5-year-old Catholic.
Yeah, you also were on the, we'll say, the chain gang, trying to clear out the rubble that day, were you?
Yeah, but you know what the worst of it was? I heard the bomb. I wasn't that far away, 50, about 100 yards. And the worst thing for me, not at the time, but after it was, in those days, they're now called first responders, but we're talking here about the ambulance, right? They were picking limbs up and put them into clear plastic bags. So that's what they were doing. Now like set up this whole scene, cover it all up, and then take things away and nobody sees anything. And that they didn't. The clear plastic bags were putting limbs into it, you know. And you don't think about it at the time, but afterwards you go, did I just see it? Like, you know, and I didn't know this at the time, but the 18-month-old baby, I knew the guy who was the father, and he was a trade unionist. And this is the story. I'll tell you it very quickly. He had to go to a trade union conference on the Friday, and it was in Birmingham or somewhere like that. Now, I'm not 100% sure, but it was in England. That's just England. And he went there, and his wife, I think, was a nurse, and she couldn't look after the child on a Saturday because she had to work, and she asked her sister, who lived in the old park, uh, and she took a child, and she took the child down the furniture place, and the bomb went off. Now, that woman, the sister, she would never live with herself like, because of that, you know. But she didn't know there was going to be a bomb in the furniture factory, at a furniture shop. And she didn't know that was going to happen. But these are sorts of things that happen, you know. Um, and like, God love her, because, you know, she had that baby with her when that baby died. Wasn't her fault, but I'm sure she blamed herself for going there. And we don't know what's going to happen in life. You know, you walk out the door, walk across the road, and get knocked down by a bus. You know what I mean? But, you know, so those are some of the tragedies that happen in this society. And, you know, a 5-year-old Catholic boy was killed in that as well. And I think I'm not sure what was his father or grandfather, but whoever was with him died as well. So it just wasn't, you know, Protestant was killed. You know, at that time in the Shankill, lots of people came from Catholic areas to shop on it because it was a brilliant shopping area then. It's not now, but it was then. It's, well, it's not that it isn't now. It's not as good as it was then. It had more of a selection. Whereas now it's very limited in selection. But, you know, so you had all of that. And that was the problem. Problem was you didn't know what you were going to do once you walked out the door. Would you come home or whatever, or not come home? So that was very horrific in terms of that. The other horrific thing for me was an R bomb. And it was a bomb in the Fourth Step Inn, which was a pub. And 2 guys were killed. Both of them were elderly, but they were characters. They'd grown up in the Shankill. They were known. There were these boys that told all the stories. They were seen as sort of like hard men or whatever. And they died that night when the bomb went off in the Fourth Step Inn. And
what age were you at the time, sorry?
What age would it have been? Let me work this out. 15. You know, so from that point of view, those were horrific. Like, so from that point of view, you know, that was the problem. So it might have been 16 at the time. I think it was. Might have been 16. But anyway, you know, those sorts of things happening were horrific. Yeah, I knew the two boys. I used to talk to them at the corner, used to tell yarns. I used to think they're all true stories. And I found out later, no, that couldn't have been true, you know what I mean? But that's the sort of people they were. They were storytellers, you know what I mean? And they were well known about the road, you know, about the Shankill Road. So from that point of view, that happened as well. Like, you know, so, and for me, they were two bombs that, you know, just were totally senseless. You know, there's been loads of bombs in the Shankill, all carried out by North Belfast area, and they were totally sectarian. You know, they can't match that up and say they weren't. These were innocent people out for the day or out for the night, and they planted bombs and killed them. You know, and they say they're not sectarian, but they were. And you know, so that was the difficulty, because it got worse and worse and worse. And you know, so from that point of view, you know, by the time we had got to the end of 72, it was horrific. You know, the amount of killings that was happening and all the rest of it. But that's the way it was.
How God, how do you describe the way you felt when you go home after, for example, like helping people take out the bodies from the furniture shop bomb or the other bombs? Just your emotional state as a mid-teens boy going home after one of them. Can you describe to me how you felt inside?
Well, I suppose the way I felt was angry, but it was numb as well. But I was angry. Questioning why people would do this. Question about why the British government, you know, didn't move against them. And I'm talking about the army and stuff like that. But you know, the army came in here with one hand tied behind their back. You know, they weren't allowed to do things. You had to produce a yellow card, all that sort of stuff. And therefore, you know, but my difficulty with that was that I seen these young lads on the street, and they were 17, 18, probably 18, and hadn't a clue where they were. They didn't know where it was a friendly area or where it was an angry area. They had to look for a tricolour to know, oh, this is in the wrong place, they're angry here. Or they had to look for a Union Jack to say, oh, this is friendly. And that's the problem that they had. They would come from Manchester, Leeds, London, Liverpool or whatever. They were just kids, and they were being slaughtered as well. And so from that point of view, you add all that together and you just go like, these people joined the army, and probably never thought that they would end up in their own country, in the UK, in a conflict, and were going to be murdered. So from that point of view, the whole thing was just messed up. It was hard to read and hard to understand, and trying to understand the politicians. They were totally useless. People like standing up, and talking about the blood we run down the streets. It wouldn't be their blood. It's going to be ours, not theirs. And that was the difficulty. And the difficulty was that you didn't know who to be angry with, you know what I mean, or angry at. You just didn't know because, politics is, then was all about illusion. It wasn't about trying to do things for people. It was about illusion, making people think that they were doing the right things when they weren't. So from that point of view, it was horrific. You didn't know where to turn. You couldn't trust the politicians. I'm talking about the politicians in Northern Ireland. And you couldn't trust the politicians in Downing Street either, because they were going to make the right decision. They were going to make a decision that made them look good.
Did it feel as if the Downing Street government and even your own government cared about you at all? I know a lot of people felt it was like a Protestant government for Protestant people, but did it feel like they cared about your conditions, about your lives at all?
No, well, I mean, I learned that from my father. They didn't care about the conditions when their lad is living what we were living in. But the point about it was when it came, the decisions was taken out of our hand, and the British government came in, disarmed the RUC, done all that sort of stuff. Therefore, you just went, they don't even know what they're doing here. This is the wrong thing. They need to be thinking about what they're doing. They didn't treat it, they treated it as not only a conflict and didn't look at it like that they needed to stop this. They tried to curtail it and contain it. And all of that was done by having informers in the IRA. But at the same time, those IRA informers were still able to go and do whatever they wanted to do. And later on when they were looking for loyalist informers and stuff, they let them do the same thing. Let them go and murder people. So they weren't really containing anything. It just made the whole situation worse. But look, listen, who knows? I'm not aware of all the facts. I can only pick things up read things after 30 years whenever they're released. But, at the time it felt like nobody knew what they were doing. That they were making their own calls all the time. And don't get me wrong, I've been beaten by the police. I'm beaten by the army. And, I remember, about 1973, I wasn't living with my mother at the time, but I did go home one day to get a bath. And my mum said, they're going to come round here. And bingo, I got out the back, over the wall and away. And the army came in the street in Saracens and crashed it was about 4 cars in the street and crashed into 2 of them. On badness. And see the 2 that crashed into, the only 2 people in the street that had phones at the time. And what was that for? Well, now he comes back, who's ringing us? That's what they were doing. It was like, I'd read all these books and all, about conflicts, the Myanmar and stuff like that. And when I read these books, and then this was happening, I went, this is what was happening. This is what the Brits were doing. The British Army were doing in the Myanmar. What they do is, they go in and they put the fear of God into people. And when they put the fear of God in those people tell them the information. They don't become informers like somebody in an organisation, but they ring up and say, oh, he's there and I want to know. It's that sort of stuff. And that's what they do all the time. And on some occasions it works, and other occasions it doesn't, you know. But it did work that day, like, because they rang me, they rang them to tell them I was there.
You
But
might.
you know, that's the sort of tactics you use, you know.
You've described before. I've read in articles about you that you described your partaking in the riots when you were kind of a younger teen. You described it as like an initiation of sorts. And what age were you at the time you were referring to, and just what was it like for you engaging in riots? Did it feel like you were kind of able to unleash some of the frustration and anger?
No, I never ever thought like that. For me, some reason, and I never thought this through. I would describe it. You know, one of the things that I became was a person who was directing, but I also did it as well. And it came natural to me. I can't explain this, but it came natural to me. And you know, so I watched what they were doing, and then I tried to make sure we countered what they were doing. You know what I mean? And it all became this game, and a game of tactics and stuff like that. And so some kids use a computer to do that now, you know, and war games and stuff like that. But then, I suppose, you know, I didn't have a what do you call it? No, what do you use to play them?
Ataris or something?
Yeah, whatever it is. But what you know, so it was just my head telling me what I needed to do. So anyway, that's what it was about. You know, orchestrated things, then made sure that people knew. But I also had to do it myself to actually show other people. And so they used what was called snatch squads. So they had this group of soldiers, maybe six of them, and they went snatch you and bring you back. And they either get crap out of you or you got charged or done both. But anyway, and that was the sort of thing we did. But, you know, so from that point of view, it was about how do you stop them getting you? What do you do? And I mean, you know, I used to say to people, right, this is what we need to do. And you need to make sure you can get away quick. Um, and don't be tripping over somebody or you're caught. And loads of people tripped over or people get caught. Like, but it was that sort of thing, just about how do we do it? What are they doing? Uh, and I watched them for a while, what they were doing. And then decided,
Being
well, if we do this, they can't do that. You know what I mean? So that's what we did.
Okay, yeah. So you at one stage even set up, I think, in an attempt to get into the UVF, despite being too young, you set up like a youth wing. You might
Yeah,
talk
I
to us
did, yeah.
about that kind of what age you were, what you got up to even.
15. And I'll
So
tell you what we got up to.
27.
But, you know, um, we had a group was armed. So, you know, we had somebody who got the arms and stuff like that, and then we distributed them. And that was one of the points that the UVF knew and were interested. So I had brought attention on us because they were wanting to know where are we getting this stuff from? Who is it? The plan, you know, the rest of it. But anyway, in terms of all of that, you know, they never ever found it. So, you know, and they were never going to find out because it was a personal um, relationship between two people and they were only two knew. So, but I would say the UVF benefited from it in
Did
terms
you,
of. Go
sorry,
ahead.
I remember Eddie saying that when he was in, I think when he was in the UVF or maybe in a youth wing, one of his first duties as like a fella in his mid-teens was going around doing armed robberies on people who had personal protection weapons as a way of procuring arms. You know, was that something that you ever did?
No, no, I didn't. Other people did, and Eddie would be right. Um, I suppose from that point of view, um, everybody had a job that they could do, and if anybody couldn't do it, then they weren't there. So, you know, one of the things was when they came in, what is it you want to provide this organisation? What are you going to give? And, so they thought about it and then said, yeah, I'll do that, I'll do that, I'll do that. And some people were talking about that they were prepared to pull the trigger, all of that sort of stuff. And he always tested them out. So from that point of view, it was, what do you call it? Making a choice about whether you could do or whether you couldn't. And if somebody came back and said, oh, I can't do that, then that was fair enough. As long as we're honest about it, then you could put them on to something else. So that's how it worked. And again, I suppose, my view was that, don't put people under pressure if they can't do something. Let them do what they want to do. And therefore, they all know their own level and they know not to go above that, stay wherever they are doing whatever they're doing. Other people come into the organisation were intelligence gatherers. That was it. They didn't do anything other than gather intelligence. And, and I think it was about 3 of them, and they'd gathered some intelligence over the years about things that we needed to know about, or people we needed to know about, all that sort of stuff. So everybody had a different level they had to work out. Some people said, I'll do an armed robbery. They did it. That was it. They were supplying the money to buy the arms.
You might there's a story. It's kind of emblematic of like how involved you were at such a young age. It was when you were about to get on the school bus, and I think someone told you, or you saw that the British Army was there on it looking for you. Obviously, a school bus is like a symbol of like youth and kind of teenagehood. Like you were actually known. There was like intel on you that the British Army had. You were that into it, like.
Well, it just wasn't intel. Well, it was intel, but I knew that they were angry. And they were angry because the weekend before, I had climbed up on their bunker in an army camp and took the flag down. And when I took the flag down,
sorry, you took a Union Jack.
Sorry,
you took down a Union Jack.
No. It was our company flag. Which, when you do that, it's a disgrace on them. They were withdrawn that night. They were overrun. I took the flag down. They were overrun, and they brought in 7 para. So I ended up with them chasing me, trying to catch me. But anyway, so I got away. I knew they were there because I was told. And I was walking up the street to go home. I just went to myself, what am I doing here? Like, I'm a lad at school. And now I've got the British Army looking for me. And anyway, I went home, and the police came to the door of the army and said to my mother, we need him to come for questions. Says, you can't take him. He's not the age. Says, we'll have to get his father. His father's at work at the minute. So tell me where you want him to go, and his father would bring him up later. And that's what they did. So my dad took me up to the police station, and I went in, and before I went in, my dad said, you say nothing, keep quiet. Don't answer any questions unless I tell you. So anyway, we went in and started asking questions, and my dad said, he's not answering that. He said, you put the evidence on the table that suggests that he did this. So I put a thing on the table of a photograph. There are 4 photographs, and they weren't great. They're very grainy and all the rest of it. But in the photographs, the person had a handkerchief tied around his face, so you couldn't see his face. And it was all grainy. And your man says, that's definitely you. And I went, is it? And he says, aye. He says, I can tell by your eyes. And I went, what about my eyes? He says, your eyes is a dead giveaway. So my dad says, can I have a look at that? He says, that's very grainy. I can't even see his eyes. He says, I couldn't tell you it was my son. Anyway, my dad says, you going to charge him or what? So he charged me, and I went to court, and the judge threw it out. The photographic evidence wasn't good enough. So that was it.
Um,
And from then on, I was a marked boy. Like, no matter where I went, they were stopping and searching me, all that sort of stuff. Um, and later on, about a year or two later, when I was in a car, no matter what it was, we stopped the car, searched it, got us all out, blah, blah, blah. And then they even stripped the car off it. One occasion, I was in a taxi and stripped the man's taxi. And he said to me, "May I get a mechanic to put that back, mate?" And just left it there. But all of that was those tactics were turning people against you.
I see.
And fortunately, I was in a taxi and the guy knew me. So I got into a taxi and he said to me, "Are you all right?" And I went, "Yeah." He says, "Do you want me to get back out again?" He says, "No, no, it's all right." Because he obviously knew that they've been looking for me because it was a talkative place. And, taxi depots weren't that old then. They were like 3 or 4 years old. Weren't that old in terms of no people operating. So, and I thought he'd have been angry with me, but he wasn't. And I said to him, "Look, I'll get a mechanic to come down and do it." He said, "Do you know someone?" I went down and I told him his name. He says, "Right, great." So he came down along with two boys and they put the car back together again. But like, it was your mom's living, like, you know what I mean? And that's what they did. But again, and he was going on and on and on about, "Why damn bastards do that?" And I went, "That's to get you to turn on me and to tell them whenever you see me." "I'm not going to do that." I says, "I know that." I says, "He put the car back together again, you'll be all right." So put the car back together again in quick time, like, and your man got in it and drove off. He seen me about 2 weeks later. He said, "That car's going better now than it did before they took it apart."
Did
So,
it feel, given you're being chased around the place by the British Army, was there ever a feeling in your head or a thought being like lads, I'm actually working for the same aim as ye. Like, I want to keep these 6 counties part of the UK, and I'm trying to stop people from taking it back to the Republic. You're here essentially for the same thing. It's year like Empire, so to speak. There was never that feeling of we're
oh,
actually.
because the whole thing about it was that they had, when they come in on their first tour, they're told about loyalism and they're told about republicanism. Loyalism isn't on our side. They're against us. They're having our people killed every day and all that sort of stuff. So it's the black side of it that they tell. It's not the truth, you know. So I mean, I was in a car and it was going up Crumlin Road and power troopers were behind me in what do you call it, in an open back Land Rover. And they were pulled in front of me. And as they pulled in front of me, I drove down the street. And next thing, a Land Rover came out of another street and blocked me in. So I got out of the car and run down the entry. And the soldier was coming up behind me. His SLR pointed at me and he cocked it and pointed at me. He said, "Stop or I'll kill you." And I said, "Do you not mean you're going to stop or I'll shoot?" He says, "No, I'm going to kill you. Stop." So I stopped. And they brought me up behind me, searched me, took me out on the street. And this woman was going by. And I said to her, shouted at her, because I knew her. I said, "Yeah, go to Mina Brown's house and tell her I need a solicitor right away. I've been arrested." She says, "Right, okay." She went and done that. And got me into the back of a Land Rover, lay me down flat, and put the feet on me. So anyway, the drive up towards the mountain, and I'm going, "Now, this is going to be good." And they're all talking like, they're like lads, you know what I mean? And, it's like a kidder trying to kid a kidder, if you know what I mean? So I'm in the back of him, and the man says, "I'm going to shoot him." "No, you're not." "I am." "No, I'm shooting him." So your man says, "Get the thing out." So they blindfolded me, got me out of Land Rover, took me into this field, and told me to get down on my knees. And they pushed me down on my knees. And so your man cocks a gun. I hear a gun cracking, fired it. And well, he fired it. The other one must have hit me with a rifle, and I went down. So I'm lying there, and I could feel the blood running out of my cheek. And then the next thing was, I heard them all laughing. But my head was totally damp, but it was a stream that was running down. And I didn't, so anyway, I was soaking. Um, He lifted me up, hands behind the back, and they lifted me up. And they put me back in the Land Rover. And they said, "You think I'm a fucking clever cunt?" And I said, "I must have been, because you didn't kill me." And they says, "You fucking told that woman we had you." He said, "So there was nothing we could do. So we'll give you a bit of medicine, but we're taking you back down." I said, "You know what? You can't have me without the police being present." They're right, okay. Next thing, the police came and met them, and they took me to the Town Street Police Station. And the two other people who were in the car with me in Town Street Police Station, it was like, the reporter cabins, and I went in, and your mom, I said, "Your mom, what are you doing now?" He said, "You're getting here." And they hung me up where they took a boxing bag down, and then they put my hands on the hook and hung me there. And next thing was this squatty came in, about 18, but older than me, maybe a year or whatever older. And he came in and punched the shit right out of me.
Jesus.
And then the boy with a rifle came over and said to me, "That's here, chick." And I went, "No, not lifting my head." So your man said, "Hold his head up." And he smacked my chick with a rifle. Anyway, by this stage, everybody had known I was there. So solicitor come up trying to get in and said, "Oh," police said, "Well, we've another couple of hours to go before we can get him. Once we get him, we'll let you in." So brought me out. Police brought me out and came a solicitor. He said, "What happened?" I says, "Beat the shit out of me." And he says, "I had two boys told me that it was with you." And I went, "Did it?" Said I. And said, "What did they do?" And I told him what they done. So anyway, he said, "Right, okay." I said, "Look, I think my jaw's broke. So I need to go to hospital. So if you can get me there as quick as possible, go to hospital." So I had to go to the major hospital and had a fractured cheekbone. And so anyway, next day, a Unionist politician approached me and said, "We're going to make a case of this." So he approached the officers. They said, "No, we're not making a case. That only reinforces Republican propaganda."
Oh
And he
God.
said,
Because it would make it
he
look
said,
like,
"This is a fucking 17-year-old boy who's a loyalist and a unionist, and you're telling me you don't want." He says, "This is not propaganda, it's the truth. It looks like Republican propaganda." So like you couldn't, nobody wanted to know, like. But anyway, that's where it was.
you mentioned there about your parents, through all your activities in like the youth UVF, were they aware that you were involved with paramilitaries? Were they aware of the extent? What was it just when you started getting army and cops coming to the door, or what?
Yeah, well, I suppose it was when the army and cops came to the door, they were aware, you know. Didn't talk much, tell me about it.
They wouldn't ask you like what the fuck are you doing, like?
No, because I think they knew that it was too far gone by this stage. That there was no road back, if you know what I mean. And they also knew that I was committed to doing what I was doing. So from that point of view, they were always sort of maybe brought it up every now and again. "What are you doing?" and all that. But that was about it.
Obviously,
They
we
never supported what I did, like, I was just with me.
sure, but even being as young as you were, they kind of knew that you were that like hard into it, that there was no point trying to convince you out of it.
And they were hearing stories from other adults as well, like, so, you know, my mother had a Catholic friend she had 10 one time, which came to me about it and said to me, "Do you know anything about this?" I said, "The only thing I know is it was done with the UDA, because they claimed it." And I said, "But don't know." Um, so that was about it.
We won't dwell on it too much, but the incident that ended up putting you in prison, there was two I think I've read that at the time you believed they were involved in paramilitary groups, but I think it transpired they were just innocent. There was two men on their way to work, and you were driving, and your friend jumped out and shot him. Can you take me maybe to like your mindset at the time, that you were willing to go this far?
Well, you see, I mean, it's a long time ago, and I realise I have relatives, so I don't want to talk about it. But I can tell you now, that there was evidence against them, and
Okay.
that's the issue. But but because I know, and what I don't want to do is annoy people who are victims, so therefore I don't do it. For that very reason, it's simple. It's in the papers. Um, it's been repeated 100 times, so like there's nothing more I can tell you that it hasn't been in the papers. But from that point of view, our intelligence was good, and it was proven. It just wasn't anything else. But all you got to do is look at the death notices and see who had it in.
Meaning what?
Meaning that the IRA columnists had them in.
Okay, they were
Put
in.
that in for you don't put that in for people who's not on column.
I see. Okay, so how soon after the shooting did you and your accomplice get caught?
Very quick, very quick. Two things was that they'd been looking for me, because an off-duty police officer going to work, had tied me into it. He had seen me. He'd seen me in the car, and therefore he was able to tell them. So they got us very quickly. They very nearly got me at the scene. Well, as we drove away. Uh, uh, sorry, they very nearly got me just after. Um, uh, because I got out of the car and I run up and at me and they didn't get me in the car. But anyway, so they knew who it was. They just had to come and collect us. Like, um, so from my point of view, that was the issue. So the guy was very, very quick.
I see. I see. There was a quote there from an interview you did in like 2020. It said, "So I justify everything I did during the Troubles to stay sane. I have to." And that's to me quite a fascinating quote. If you could unpack it a bit for us.
Well, I mean, like, listen, unless you're a psychopath, right? It's very hard to do anything. Uh, you need to have coping mechanisms. You need to convince yourself that you're right. You need to convince yourself that it's the enemy. You need to do all of that. Otherwise, I suppose in 66, when Gusty Spence and the others went to jail, there was only 2 life sentence prisoners. One, I think, was a guy who was a paedophile and took a pair of pliers to the jail after he was finished. And the other one shot his mother-in-law.
Oh my God.
I don't want to go into mother-in-law jokes because it was a say no, it was right, like, but that was the issue. So did we waken up in 66 and all become psychopaths? That's the point that I'm trying to make. None of this is easy. None of it's comfortable. But you have to believe in a cause and all the rest of it. So that's what you have to do. And that apply would apply, I'm assuming, the IRA. You need to believe in something, otherwise, you also need to be careful how you do it, but you need to demonize the enemy, but you also need to recognize the enemy as well, if you know what I mean. So it's not a question of just demonizing them. That might allow you to kill them, but you also need to recognize what will they do if you do this and all the rest of it. So it's about, it's all of that. And, you need to have a mindset to make sure that you're in that mindset and you do it. So those were all the things. Everybody would have had to do that. You just don't go out and do something and then come back and say, that was all right.
When you talk about demonizing your I guess your enemies or in the conflict your opponents, how wide did that net go? Was it I mean, was it just IRA, and then IRA supporters, and then wider Catholics. Did it take long for it to get to?
Oh, well, I think what you need to realize is the UVF took a decision in 1972. The way to drive the IRA out was to kill Catholics, and then the Catholics would put the IRA out. That didn't work, right? But then if you go till the 80s, the thing that did work was that in South Tyrone, I think it was, or West Tyrone, whichever one it was, but anyway, South Tyrone, I think it was, the UVF focused on Republicans, people who were active in the Republican movement, and so they went after them, and the IRA were screaming to have a ceasefire. What they tried to do was try to blame this was collusion between the British and Loyalism. But the point about that is it wasn't. This was about Loyalism going after them, and it went after them in the 80s. Now, both the IRA and UVF were looking for ceasefires at that particular time, but they needed circumstances to be right. Both of them were talking to intermediaries for British government separately, but both of them were talking to them. So you had all of that going on after this happened. So from that point of view, it's about the strategy. In 72, the strategy was wrong. It didn't work. That's the reason why it was wrong. But they assumed the Catholic population would have drove the IRA. They didn't. They turned to them more and drove them out. So that was a mistake. But it was a wrong tactic rather than a mistake. It was a wrong tactic. This other tactic worked. So from time to time, even if brigade staffs like anything else, it could be right wing or left wing at any given stage, depending who was on it. I'm assuming it was the same for the IRA, original IRA, and the official IRA. So therefore, all the stars need to align for these things to happen. And they did. And people worked their way to 94, the ceasefires, and the rest is history, as I say. So from that point of view, it's a question of, coming up with tactics, trying them, and some work and some don't, and you change your tactics all the time. The other thing is that what you're really reliant on is whoever's on brigade staff. You're looking more of a left leaning than a right leaning to get things to work.
You mentioned there about the IRA talking about loyalist and security forces collusion. Obviously quite a lot gets made of it. In all your through all your years being involved in paramilitaries and UVF and so on, did you see any examples of pretty security forces, be it RUC, Army, Special Branch, colluding with loyalists? I'm sure it happened with Republicans too, but on any
no, it didn't. But the thing I would say to you is, if you're living under your car every morning, you're taking your 5-year-old daughter to school, you might decide to help somebody. If there's a judge coming from holiday and coming across the border, killing, and you kill him, who helped you? Who told you that's happening? Was it a Gardaí officer? I'm not saying it was, but was it? Was it somebody in the travel agency? Who colluded? So when is collusion, and when is it not? So from that point of view, what I'm saying to you is I never knew anything about any institutional collusion. To give you a story myself, a personal story for me. I'd been approached by somebody, senior in UVF, and they said to me, this major, I'm not going into all the detail, but I'll tell you, this major wanted me to go and see him. And I went, no, fuck off. I'm not going to see any major. I said, what's he want? He wants to talk to you. He thinks that you're a black because his people's being killed. And they can't go after the people that's killing them because of us, right? And I said, well, we're not going to see him. No way. So anyway, I came out of a place in Belfast, and I came out the door. the army was all around us. And he said to me, I want you to stop doing this. He says, I have no evidence you're doing it. He says, but we believe it's you. He says, but my soldiers are being killed because of you. I went, I'm not killing your fucking soldiers. What are you talking about? I'm not involved in anything. And he says, well, if you can make all the arguments you like. He said, I've got evidence on you. I said, you've got evidence of me and charge me. Off. He said to me, I'm not finished with it. I said, go fuck. He says to me, I'm telling you, blah, blah, blah. So I went away. And that night, there was something was supposed to happen, and I stopped it. And I said, no, stop it. And I got two of the guys I was talking about earlier. I said to them, I want you to go out. I want you to come back and tell me what the patrols are like all around here. Go out and track it. And come back to me, said to me, it's heavy. Army police everywhere. And I went, okay. So I called a couple of people in. I says, operations are suspended for a month. Why? I said, because there's a high police level of police and army. And I said, and after this morning, we need to calm it down. And said to me, right, okay. So I got them to do that. They all pulled back. Nothing happened. And somebody came to me and said to me, what the fuck are you doing? And I says, I'm doing the right thing. And I says, and I'm doing it on the basis of our safety, of the people, and of weapons. So I said, don't want to do it, but I have to do it. I said, security services are too high in the area. I said, they're already focusing on us. And I said, so I pulled everybody. Nobody was doing anything for 4 weeks. And the guy said to me, well, I didn't know any of this. And I said, if you're wise, you'll do exactly the same thing as I've done. I said, there's a high intensity in this. I said, the focus is on us. Doesn't mean to say it's not you, but it is on us. I said, that message was given to me loud and clear. And I said, so I'm backing off. I said, I don't want people going out and getting arrested or don't want any weapons lost. So I said, that's it, simple. And anyway, that all happened. And the whole thing blew over. Other people have been arrested, lost weapons and all arrested. But we've done it and said to people, this is what we're doing. And I said, so therefore, I said, I was asked and told him who asked me to meet him. And I said, no. But he went in to me and I got our people to go out and check it out. And when they checked it out, we were all over the place. So I was through. I said, I don't know what it done for him, but it certainly saved us. People going to jail and also getting arrested. And that's what we did. You had to live in your wits, and you had to make decisions on the basis of a thought process where, well, what happens if I fucking do jack a lad here and say, right, everybody go, and they get arrested? Or I say to people, move in weapons and they move them and they're caught. Or go and do an armed robbery and they get caught. I said I wasn't prepared to do it, because for me, the evidence was too heavy by this stage. Being approached by somebody who's going to talk to him, no, I'm not doing it. Then he comes to me and he very clearly let it on what he was going to do. So I was through everybody. And that was it. And nobody was arrested. But I don't remember Iron Man being arrested or being killed or anything like that. So I don't know. But the point about it was I wasn't taking any risks. It was you just have to measure things. Sometimes you don't want to do it, but it's in the interest of people.
Were you ever aware of like an RUC or some kind of security force agent within the UVF while you were operating? I mean, I'm thinking of examples like this would be more in the 90s, but Mark Haddock, the Ken Barrett was obviously I think UVF.
Yeah,
But that kind of thing.
Yeah. I can tell you another story. I was in England and was coming back. And
when is this now? Sorry,
I says I was in England. This was in '73. I had to go to England to sort something out. And I was on my way back. And I've seen this guy talking to the same soldier who was talking to me, right, in cities. And anyway, I got back, called a couple of people together, on a very high level in the UVF. And I said, this guy's an informer. How do you know? I said, I've seen him with him. And the other guy with him, from my point of view, was a member of military intelligence. And I said, and they were very comfortable, laughing, joking, and all the rest of it. I said, so this wasn't a haphazard meeting. I said, the other thing is, this guy stayed in the same place and came back home again. And I said, now he's in his house. And I says, if you don't know where he lives, I'll tell you. I says, I'm going to get somebody to go and lift him, and we'll interrogate him. And said to me, no, we'll do it. So I rang I was in a club an hour later, and somebody came in. I says, I see him, where is he? We're only going for him now. I said, you wish you had time. And he said to me, why? I said, I've already sent somebody up. And I said, he's been moved. He says, what do you mean? I says, he's been moved. I said, it was a removal lorry, moved all the stuff out of his house. And he was put in the variable under and taken away. When? An hour ago. So why did I contact us? Now, remember, there was no way mobile phones or anything. So how was going to do that? I'm waiting on news coming. And said to me, right, well, better call it off. I said, call it off. You should have done it earlier. He disappeared off the face of the earth.
Really?
Yeah. Now, who told him? I don't know. Was it an informer? He was an informer. So I'm sure that they had intelligence to say something was happening. So it was removed. Yeah, there's always a chance that, and no matter what paramilitary organization you have, there's always been an informer. You know, everybody's different, all different mentalities, different sort of, how to describe it, you know, things that they want to do. You know, fear God put up them, don't want to go to jail or don't want to die or whatever, and they'll do anything. So you know, they've always, like, this is nothing new. It's always been about that, you know, that they would use people to give them information. And there'll be different levels of information. Obviously, he was handing up the organisation, knowing what was going on. Anyway, he disappeared, never come back.
Did the UVF? I mean, okay, so recently there's been like a lot of talk about steak knife and books about it and so on. Obviously, he was in the internal security unit within the IRA, the Nothing Squad, as it was known. Was there like an equivalent in the UVF? Was there like a Nothing Squad for you, for informers? You know.
No, I thought, well, there probably was, but it's never planned, if you know what I mean. I think it was always whenever something like that was happening, they would have picked people individually. And so therefore it was very hard to tell who was doing what. I think that having a Nothing Squad, if they're all in the same squad, it's very easy. Yep.
Which most certainly happened, yeah. Rat
Yeah,
infest.
and that you know who it is. Specialisms are great, but they have their faults. And their fault is that whenever you're known to have a specialism, then when something happens, you know, they can find it out very easily. So it's a question of trying to use different people at different times. And that doesn't always happen. It didn't always happen to UVF. People may have used 2 or 3 times, but the whole idea was just use people to do it. And usually, yeah, people who they wouldn't have known as well.
Okay, see, right. So, we were talking about you getting caught for the shooting. How long did you end up serving in Long Kesh?
16 years.
And you went in at the age of
18. But what you need to remember here as well is that I've got all my stuff from prison, got it out of the archives, and they put me back. I refused to recognise, so did Eddie Kinner as well, by the way. We refused to recognise a late sentence review board. He never went in front of them, but they took information from prison officers who I don't know how they would have ever known anything because they were never with us. You know, they walked around the compound, they were outside the compound, The only time we came into contact with you was when you went to visit, or you went to a doctor's, or you went to see a welfare officer. So from that point of view, but anyway, so when I was in for 15 years, it put me back for 5 more years. Myself and Pat Thompson, who was in charge of the provisional RA in Long Kesh, me and him had been approached by an Australian diplomat who wanted to look at special category status in the compounds in terms of a prison system, because he had read about it, thought it was a good idea, and there was less recidivism and all the rest of it. But anyway, so he came to see me, and he said to me, "Can you explain all this?" So I explained it all to him, told him about what the whole ethos was, how it worked, what we did, and all that. And so we had a long chat. And he says to me, "I'm going to Whitehall tonight for dinner. Do you mind if I talk about this?" And I went, "No." I said, "Whitehall should know about it. If they don't, then what are they doing?" So he says, "I'm going to go and see the guy in charge of provisional IRA." I said, "That's okay." I said, "Don't be surprised if Pat doesn't tell you what I told you. Don't be surprised if Pat and me, we haven't talked." I said, "But it'll happen. You'll see a lot of similarities." And he said, "Right, okay." So he went and talked to Pat. And Pat came down the next day. He's going to a doctor's, and he called me, and I went out, and I said, "What happened?" He says, "What about your mum last night?" And I was straight into diplomat. I said, "He said he's going to Whitehall and all the rest of it." But anyway, Pat says, "I." So he wasn't bodged, he wasn't. I went, "He listened, Pat." That's what I'll say. And not only did he listen, but he heard. And Pat said to me, "Oh, you're right, you're right." Anyway, about a week later, I was approached by a governor. He'd been put in specially to talk to me. And he says to me, "Look, we'll have a problem." And I says, "Do you?" I said, "Is this Houston has a problem, or who is it?" And he went to me, "We have a problem." And I said, "What's your problem?" He says to me, City Hospital is putting a drain on the money, and so are you." And I says, "Well, you're not getting me steak every day." He says, "No, but we have to feed the dogs steak, war dogs, who belong to the army." I said, "That's not my fault." I said, "It costs you more to keep a dog a week than it was me." And he started laughing. He says, "No, seriously, can we start talking?" I says, "What are you talking about?" I says, "Tell me." So he told me all he's told me. I says, "Look, let me go away, think about this, talk to a couple of people, and then we'll come back to you." He says, "I'll give you a week." I says, "Right, okay." So he came back in a week. And I said to him, "Right, here's the deal. Um, if you want us out of here, we get what we have here in the H blocks, all the doors locked back, put curtains up, the whole H blocks open to us. The yard gets opened up so we can walk around the yard, not just part of it. Um, we get fridge, we get washing machines, we get dishwashers, a lot." Anyway, "Why are you asking this?" And I says, "Well, we have dishwashers here, but we do it by hand. But I'm assuming you won't have that same thing in the blocks." And I said, "So, that's, sort of it." He said, "Is that all you want?" I says, "No." I said, "Every man special category status is released within 2 years." "No chance." I said, "Then deals it off, go away." He said, "We'll go and talk to Pat and I'll come back to you." So he went to Pat and said to Pat. Pat told him all the same things, except Pat said, "We're only out in 18 months. He says, "No, we'll go 2 years." So he had recognised, but anyway, and that's what we did. They moved us over to the blocks, gave us everything we asked for, and then they started releasing us one by one. Now, this is before ceasefires, right? This is 89. 80, started about 87, and they started releasing everybody. And let me out in 1990.
1990 you're out.
Yeah.
Was it in prison where you kind of had a mind shift mindset shift, excuse me, related to like whether violence was the way to go or political means. Did it happen in prison?
Oh yeah, of course it did. Yeah, and so it did. Dusty led a lot of it in terms of talks and stuff like that. But no, and so it was a bit like, I would describe this. When you're in prison, you were looking out the window and you could see everything was going on. The window was the TV, by the way, but you were shouting at the TV. And then you went, "They can't fucking hear me," But you could see the mistakes people were making. So we always worked towards that, and the governor knew that. All the visitors that used to come in terms of people from different parts of the world come in to see you. People used to complain to me, "This is like a zoo," or coming in the guys. They said, "Look, there's a motive in this. You just need to bear with me," and that would have worked, because everybody went out and talked about what we were doing, what Pat Thompson was doing, and then all of a sudden this Australian went, "Can you not see this?" The ones in Whitehall. Now, you realise that these people are working towards peace. Can you not see what they're doing? They're working with people on the outside, and both of them are heading towards a ceasefire. Not because of the deal, but because on the outside have said they need to find a way to do it. And then Whitehall sat up and listened. And for whatever reason, they listened to this Australian diplomat. They've been told that story 60 times. Never once before did they listen. Or they did listen, they didn't hear. On this occasion, they did. So they set the motion in place for things to happen. So the father and the priest who became the conduits to the IRA and the UVF. So they met with the IRA and they met with UVF on different occasions, went back, reported back, tell the MAO, told them what was going on. And that's where all that started. And I'm talking about 87, 85, between 85 and 87.
Okay.
So those things started to happen. So therefore, they were building that momentum. People were hearing what was going on. And anyway, we were released. In 94, on the 15th of December, we went to meet the civil servants. Sinn Féin went to meet the civil servants. And we sat in the office in the Shankill upstairs. And Gusty said, "Look, listen, I want Hutchie to lead this today rather than David." So, "David, this is not about you. This is about Hutchie." Said, "Why? Look at who the person is chairing the meeting." Said, "Who is I?" Said, "This is a boy Hutchie negotiated with and got all the prisoners out within 2 years and got to move to blocks and got the blocks changed, next compounds were." Said, "Now, what I'm saying to you is that these people are Las Vegas card sharks." They said, "So we need to make them unsettled. But Hutchie in his chair. Let him lead the delegation. David, you talk all you want, but let them think that Hutchie's running this for the day." And David said, "I think that's a great idea." So anyway, we moved up and sort of went in, and one of the people who I had known from Whitehall came down the hall and he says, "Hello, how are you? Keeping well? I haven't seen you for a couple of years." I said, "I'm 4." And he started laughing. And he says, "I'm going to take you in, but before I take you in, I have to tell you to swap the chairs. You're getting Sinn Féin's chair and Sinn Féin's getting your chair." So Gusty was right. This was the psychology. You unnerve him. He said, "So swap the chairs over." And I said, "That was very handy." He says, "When we heard you were leading the delegation, we swapped them over." And I said, "Maybe we shouldn't have told you that we got here." He said, "We'll still swap them because we suspected that you were going to pull something like that." And he looked over my shoulder and Gusty started slaying. And he just laughed and walked away. So they read what we're trying to do. And this is the thing about it all the time. So you always need to do that. But anyway, just telling you that. So we come out and David says to me, "You handle the press. Because we're going to talk about prisoners anyway, you handle the press." So I took a question. First question was, what were you doing in there? Of course, you were talking about prison releases. I went, no. What were we talking about prison releases for? I said, we're talking about the constitutional position of this country. And I said, so, no, we weren't. And he said, so you didn't talk about prison releases? I said, no. I says, I did, on my own, privately, to the guy who actually released me. What are you talking about? I said, how many prisoners are on the street, life sentence prisoners are on the street in Northern Ireland? And he turned around and said, hey, man, I said, 365. He went, what? I said, 365. And somebody tapped me on the shoulder and said, such and such has just been released. I said, I'm sorry, there's no one on that. There's just one been released. Your mom said to me, how does this happen? I said, that happened because two things. Ulster Hospital was costing a fortune and they were losing money. Long Kesh was too dear to keep open. So it's on time. I said, why do we not know nothing about this? And I said, is there an investigative journalist out there? Maybe if there was, you would have known. So the media were taken back by that. And therefore asked to meet me in a group. And I went to meet them. And they said to me, are you serious about this? I said, of course I am. I said, look, listen, it was us, the provost knew they all did it. I said, it was a negotiation. And he says, over the money. I said, yes, couldn't afford to keep it up. Needed us to move the H blocks. And we said, you can't move us to H blocks. We're special category status. And you need to give us what is on the terms of our special category status. Free association, we have to be able to move about the whole wing or block. You can't block us off from anybody. We need an education base. Yeah, to get their education, study, and all the rest of it. Your mom says to me, you're making this up. And then one of our journalists says he's not. And he said, our journalist said to him, how the fuck do you know? And he says, because I believe him. He said, I definitely believe him. He said, and I'm going to tell you, he said, this guy's so open, it's unbelievable. He said, he says too much sometimes. And I says, I'm not here to hide things. I'm here to tell you what's going on. I'm not telling you because it was a bad thing. What I'm trying to get through your heads is there's 300 and whatever it was on the streets, and you're fucking worrying about us talking about the release of prisoners. And I said, this was done for a deal over money. It wasn't done for a deal over, political aspirations. I said, British government needed help out. Said to me, what do you? I said, they needed rid of Long Kesh. They had to give us some. And I said, go and talk to Pat Thompson if he'll talk to you. Go and talk to Sinn Féin in the Falls and also can get you an interview with Pat Thompson off the record. Your man came back to me and says, I spoke to him. And he says, he fucking told me the whole story as you told me it. Says, it was nearly word for word. And I said, there you are. I said, me and Pat's not in the head. It was that sort of stuff, And I think the journalist then sort of sat up and started saying, right, okay. You know what I mean? And then Mo wanted to go in to see the UVF prisoners. She spoke to me and David and Plum Smith. And Plum Smith turned around and said, look, Mo, you can go in and talk to UVF prisoners all you like. Nobody's objecting to it. But you won't be talking about the constitutional position. And you won't be talking about their support or anything when talking. So she went in, she met with Johnny Adair, I think at the time, not sure who it was, whatever it was. And when she came out, she came back to us and said, he's right. They're saying that this has nothing to do with them being released. It's about the constitutional position of the country. They're not in negotiations to get released. They're not interested. What they're interested in is the constitutional position. And they're leaving all that to PEP. And Mo was genuinely going, I wasn't expecting that. And we were going, but you were told. Says, I know. Says, it's not that I don't believe you, because I believe most things you tell me, but I just went, nah, this can't be right. Says, I'm in. And these people talking to me and just said, no, it's a constitutional position. We're not looking at it. If we get out, we get out, but we're not pressing for it. And said, the PP will deal with all that. And that was the sort of things happening. So when people started to see that, people bought into that sort of stuff, and it made it easier for us to get things done.
Gotcha. Actually, you just mentioned Johnny Adair, and I read that after the Good Friday Agreement, there was kind of I suppose a feud within a certain kind of loyalist community, and that the RUC warned you that your life was under threat. That what was that like? What was that like going back to life being under threat type of
Well, I mean, what you need to realize at
so
that
long
particular
after
time, at
after.
that, yeah, but at that particular time, whenever they came and tell me, I'd already got 28 death threats.
Recent or in your life?
Yeah. And that was the issue. Like, so I wasn't worried about it. I just went. I also had an attempt in my life as well. Well, I didn't have an attempt in my life. The police avoided it. They got me before the attempt, but there was an attempt. Being carried out by a Republican group because it was advertised on BBC Radio Ulster that I was coming into the studio. And after that, they had to rethink everything. So they couldn't announce that people were coming in.
I see. And what year was the IRA threat that you're referring to?
I don't know. I'm only guessing at this. But late 90s, early 2000s.
Okay, very good. Look, thank you very much now for everything you shared. We're coming up to the end of our time. I don't want to keep you too long. Is there anything just as like a final set of thoughts to leave us with that that you wanted to mention?
Well, the thing about what I would leave you with is, look, listen, we've had the conflict, we've had the ceasefires, we've had a peace process. So therefore, we need to make sure the political process works. And it won't work until the political and peace process merge. But the reality is we've got a framework that we need to work in. And if we work in that framework, then people can live side by side. So I think that's a positive note to leave on.
Would you describe Northern Ireland now as somewhere where what you're talking about is the case, where the political system does work well?
It doesn't work well. And that's the problem. The problem was that we were supposed to review the Good Friday Agreement, and it hasn't been reviewed. If something's, so my view, this is how I would describe it. My analogy would be that if I knew my brakes weren't working on my car, I wouldn't drive it. Because it could cause death to somebody or me or both. So therefore I wouldn't do it. We've got a political process that doesn't work. It allows people to go outside the political process if they want to. And we've seen this. Police officer, prison officer killed, police officers being shot, police officers being injured, all that. And we need to stop all that. And the only way we stop that is to make sure, that framework we have works. Now, everybody, it's like the trouble is everybody can point the finger at each other. The reality is, if everybody doesn't get their shoulder to the wheel, it's not going to work. And if the system isn't working, then we need to fix it. I think that's the important thing. We know what the framework is, and we know what should be done. That's why the British and Irish government actually recognise what needs to be done, and stop pondering to people and just get on with it. So from my point of view, there's an opportunity there. It's a bit of cat, a bit of stick, but more cat stick.
Would do you ever think, maybe not even in your lifetime, but in my lifetime, we'll say that that 6 counties will rejoin the 32? Do you think that'll ever happen in the next, I don't know, number of decades?
Well, it'll happen in my lifetime. That's what I'd say to you. I can't help thinking about the people who live in poverty in Northern Ireland, particularly Catholics, wanting to go into a system where they won't have what they have here. You know, free education, free health service, all that sort of stuff. So from our point of view, I think that everybody, it's great to have an ideological thought about the United Ireland, but it's not going to keep you in the custom you're using, then I think people might go, oh no, and not yet, not yet, you know. But we'll see. You know, and I'm not suggesting for a minute that if we were to move in there, that people would be peasants. I'm not suggesting that, because then times are over in the in the developed countries. But there will be people who will be living in poverty. But the other thing I would say to you is that, you know, if it was United Ireland tomorrow, people here would get persecuted. So if United Ireland was there, I wouldn't trust Republicans not to persecute those people who were involved or their families.
I see.
So there's always a difficulty with that as well.
Yeah, reprisals and so on. Yeah, no, I understand. Thank you very much. I'm glad we could finally sit down and talk. Great stuff, and I appreciate your time and your insight.
Well, what I'm saying to you, John, is if you ever want to revisit this, or you think it's some of the stuff didn't come across or wasn't the quality you wanted, I'm here. You know how to get me.
I appreciate it. No, great. Savage. We may speak again just on another topic or more detail.
Whatever. Yeah. Just I'm here anyway. Now that you've opened up a link, just come back to me whenever you need to. All right.
Nice one. I really appreciate it. Thanks again.
Okay.